Yeah.
I don't blame you for skipping that part.
Ooh, no, I didn't.
Yeah, at
Sorry.
least there were no photos.
Yeah.
Although, it's funny is... No, go ahead. I'm not going to go off on that rabbit hole.
Yeah. Okay, so we're talking about the Keddy murders. Yes, famous Keddy murders from 1981. But first, I want to give a shout-out to our listener, Clarissa. Hello, Clarissa. Sorry, Clarissa. I'm sure you get that a lot, so sorry. But anyway, actually, I found this one of my own like a while back, and as I was researching it for this week's episode, I went through the listener suggestions and discovered that, yes, actually somebody had suggested it. So
there you go.
We got to give credit where credit is due.
Yep. Indeed.
So, yeah, thanks, Clarissa. Okay, let's talk about Keddy briefly. So Keddy, California is a very small town. It's getting smaller. It's population in population in the year 2000 was 96. Population in 2010 was 66.
That's almost like Wagon Tire, Oregon.
I know. It's it started out actually. It's kind of successful when it was first founded. I believe in 1910. It was a kind of a waypoint on the rail line up to Yosemite or somewhere. Or off to Utah, and so there was a nice little resort there, and it was a pleasant little place, nice scenery. But it had fallen on hard times by the time our mystery had occurred. And it was not really so much a resort town anymore. There were still all these cabins in this resort. The guy who bought the resort and owned it, tourists weren't coming there, so he wound up renting the cabins out as low-income housing.
Well, that was nice of him.
Well, you got to pay the mortgage.
Yeah, I know.
Well, when you find tenants where you can find tenants.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have to be low-income housing.
Joe, so people have an idea, Keddy is close to what major town for people to know?
It's about 90 miles northwest of Reno, about 80 miles east of Red Bluff, California, about 60 miles maybe northeast of Chico, California.
As the crow flies, yeah.
Yeah. So
it's like
the whole area is a national forest.
Yeah, it's in the middle of the what national forest is it?
I think it's the Plumas National Forest.
Yeah.
Because it's in Plumas County. That would make sense.
That would make sense.
That would make a lot of sense. Yeah. That area of California is really beautiful. The Sierras are just really nice.
Oh, yeah. Have you ever gone on any of those? Obviously, I've never been to this particular town, but have you ever driven through some of that area? It's a slow drive, but it's not because it's windy roads. It's because you want to take a look around.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Except you don't want to stop in Keddy.
I don't.
No.
Yeah. Our mystery begins in Keddy in cabin 28 of the resort, which is, of course, not really a resort anymore. Cabin 28 was being rented to Glenna Sharp, who went by the name of Sue, and her 5 kids, John, Sheila, Tina, Ricky, and Greg. She had a lot of kids. So
How old were they?
John was 15, Sheila was 17, Tina was 12, and the youngest were Ricky and Greg. They were 10 and 5.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was... Did you say she was 36? Is that right?
She was, 36.
Oh my
36.
gosh.
So that's a passel of kids in a short amount of time.
She cranked out a bunch of them. She'd moved into that cabin 28, in November 1980, so they hadn't been living there that long, really, maybe half a year. On the night of April 11th, 1981, a fateful night, Sheila was the 14-year-old daughter.
17.
Oh, no, yeah, 17, you're right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, John was 14.
15.
15.
Sorry.
You're right. All right.
This is the episode where I get to correct you.
I know. Serves me right.
Ha.
So Sheila goes next door to cabin 27 for a sleepover with a friend. And Justin Eason, who lived in cabin 26, was friends with the 2 youngest boys, so he was over at their place for a sleepover.
And this was a Saturday night?
Yeah.
So sleepovers on a weekend makes sense.
Yeah.
I remembered it being a weekend. I just couldn't remember what day.
Yeah, it was a Saturday. Here's a fun fact, too. Justin Eason was the stepson of one of the suspects for the murder. Yeah. So those 3 boys, the youngest ones, went to bed in the back bedroom at some undetermined time. Then John Sharp, he was a 15-year-old, spent most of the day hanging with a friend named Dana Wingate in a town called Quincy, which is several miles south of Keddy. And they were seen on Highway 70, apparently by a couple who was driving on the highway. Why they didn't stop and pick them up, I don't know. They were hitchhiking back to Keddy from Quincy, and they were seen between 9 and 10 p.m., although I've seen another timeline that has them spotted on the highway at 11 p.m. So there's a little bit of a conflict there.
Well, and I know that those boys had been at Dana's house and had asked to go if they could stay over at Johnny's house, and one of the stipulations was, yeah, you're welcome to go as long as you can get a ride. You don't hitchhike.
And he
we won't hitchhike.
Anyway.
Don't worry, no big deal. And obviously they
did.
Totally lied and did it anyway, which is a teenage boy thing to do.
Oh, it is, definitely. I'm not sure what it was like. I mean, I hitchhiked a lot when I was, not a lot actually, but I hitchhiked some when I was a teenager. And it was a lot easier to get rides back in those days. And then we had a few murders here and there. And suddenly people are not really into picking up hitchhikers anymore.
I've never picked up a hitchhike, nor have I ever hitchhiked ever.
Yeah.
In my life.
I haven't hitchhiked, but I grew up in a really small town where you knew most of the guys, and it was typically guys, most of the guys you saw walking down the street. So you'd be driving down, oh, there's Mark. Let me pull over and give Mark a ride. And so Mark would come running the car. Hey, thanks, buddy. And you give Mark a ride, at least as far as you were going. I wouldn't go out of my way.
Right.
But, hey, I can get you here, and then you're on your own from there, and save them 10 miles. They're happy.
Yeah,
oh, yeah,
totally.
Sure. Hell yeah. Well, anyway, back to these guys. They, so Dana, as you said, was planning on spending the night at Cabin 28, which, bad idea, Dana. Really bad idea. It's unclear when they arrived. Some people have hypothesized that perhaps the crime was already underway when they showed up, and just their bad luck, really bad timing on their part.
Have people theorized that they brought the crime with them?
Actually, that is definitely one of the possibilities I would consider.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, you get picked up by Mr. Psycho Killer. Yeah, and
takes you home and comes inside with you, and
can I use your bathroom?
Yeah.
All right. Well, you two have been alluding to what's going on, but our listeners don't know what's going on.
Oh yeah, we got to tell you about
Let's tell them what's happened here, because so far we've just bored them with information about people that don't matter.
That's fair.
Yeah. Dana's coming home with Johnny Sharp, and he's gonna spend the night there. They've got a sleepover in the back bedroom. Three young boys back there, already gone to bed. Sue Sharp and her daughter Tina, who's 12, are not yet asleep. Tina might have been asleep, I'm not sure, but more about that in a second. On the morning of April 12th, Sheila Sharp, who remember went next door for a sleepover, she came home about 8 a.m. and discovered that she was an orphan. Unfortunately,
Why do you have to put it that way?
Yeah, actually, it turns out she really wasn't an orphan. I checked, and actually, she had a father still living, and so the surviving Sharp children went to live with the father. So that's good. So she wasn't really an orphan.
That's good.
I just couldn't resist. So Sue, her son Johnny Sharp, and friend Dana Wingate had all been bludgeoned and stabbed to death. Yeah, a really horrible, bloody crime.
Yeah.
And Tina Sharp was missing. Tina Sharp, the 12-year-old girl, was gone. Yeah. The bodies have been tied up with white adhesive tape, probably medical tape, and also electrical wire, extension cords, basically. And then they were beaten to death with a hammer and stabbed to death. Amazingly, the three young boys in the back bedroom were untouched, and it appeared that they slept through the whole thing. Although it's hard to imagine exactly how they could have done that.
Yeah, I have run through my head a million scenarios on how that would have happened, and as of yet, I can't figure out a way.
Here's the thing about kids, particularly raised in maybe kind of more difficult home life environment. If you're trained from a child as a baby to sleep through stuff, which is what you do with babies, because you have to get stuff done while they're sleeping. They can pretty much sleep, usually, 5 to 10-year-olds can sleep through, at least vacuuming and stuff like that. And, unless it's possible that these murders were carried out without a whole lot of screaming.
It is possible.
Given some of the injuries, it's possible that there wasn't actual screaming, and then, all the rest of the noises could have been relatively quiet.
Well, and if there's a TV on and you're used to hearing the TV, then in your little kid brain that all melds together. I mean, I know that I slept through earthquakes as a kid.
Oh, I did too.
I once rolled out of the top bunk of a bunk bed as a kid in my sleep and didn't wake up. So I know that kids can. That tells you a lot about me now.
Yeah.
Because I'm pretty sure I landed on my head.
Yeah.
But no, I mean that does explain it. But the other thing is that the only thing that I could figure out how these boys could have slept through it, if indeed they did, is that Sue, she had, I think it was her underwear and a rag crammed in her mouth as a gag.
Yeah, it was like a blue bandana.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was it was like the blue bandana which was jammed into her mouth fairly deep.
Yeah.
And then secured with adhesive tape, and then like women's underwear wrapped around that. But
I don't even want to get into the Freudian reason that's there, but
but the two boys were not gagged as far as I know.
Was she the only one who was stabbed through the neck?
No, actually, it was her son John got stabbed through the neck.
Right.
And so that the cause of death in the case of John was severing of the carotid artery.
Well, that could sever some vocal cords.
Yeah.
Well, but the thing is, they were tied up. Well, let me ask you this: are we going to get into the rest of the details
about how
the
they died?
Crime later, or should we just do it now?
Well, no, I was going to. I was going to talk about the autopsy in a minute here, but
let's finish.
Okay, because there's some things about like what you were saying. Yeah. I know some details, but I don't want to jump the shark here.
Yeah. Well,
that's the wrong term.
Yeah, that's the wrong term totally. And our show will never jump the
shark.
Never.
Hey.
Yeah. There is some dispute about whether Justin Easton actually did wake up and open the door and look out and witness some or all of this. And he's given such wildly varying accounts.
How old is he, though?
I'm not sure. I think it was 10 or 12, something like that.
He was friends with the younger two,
He was friends
right?
with the younger two.
So, anywhere from, I guess, 5 to 12, probably.
Yeah. So
I can see how your story could change a couple times.
Yeah.
Well, the hard thing about his story and the way that it changed is what happened. I know that I was the only one who went ahead and sacrificed 3 hours of my life to watch the documentaries that were made on this set of murders.
Thank you for suffering through that for us. Yeah.
Really, and to all our listeners, I did it for you. You don't have to listen to the weird mono and then stereo audio thing that goes on in this documentary. But they record him and they talk about it. And one is when you listen to this guy tell the account of what happens, and I understand it's 20-some years later because the documentary was done in the early 2000s. He's been telling this story for years. But you could see he is just glaze-eyed, repeating things like there's no emotion, he's not thinking about it, he's regurgitating words. We were watching it on the couch and my fiance was sitting there watching it. I was listening to the audio in headphones and she's going, there's something weird about that dude. And I imagine it's because of what he went through and then all of the attention that was paid on him. But the hard part is I have a hard part with his story and I blame it on the cops. Do you guys know that the cops put him under hypnosis?
Oh, what?
Yeah, the lead investigator had him hypnotized. So he told the story once, it shifted a little bit. They hypnotized him, it shifted a little bit. And then it just it did this weird progression through time. So I would like to say that he didn't see anything.
I kind of suspect that he didn't. And he said himself, on one account, he got up and opened the door and saw this. And another account, it's like he had a dream. He just dreamed the whole thing. So and the thing about hypnosis too is you can't force somebody to be hypnotized. The subject has to want to be hypnotized.
Well,
maybe they didn't even have him actually under.
Well, that's exactly it. Because during hypnosis, I think one of the things he said is that he was watching from a crack in the bedroom door as he watched he said it was two men, watched them go out into the kitchen and out the kitchen door. But evidently when you're standing in that bedroom, you can't see the kitchen.
I think, I think that what it sounds like to me is like a little kid trying to be helpful.
Yeah.
Nail on the head.
It's a little kid who was like traumatized, quite frankly, by what they saw and trying to be helpful. And if the cop, is in your face saying, okay, Justin, what'd you see? And you go, nothing. And they go, are you sure you didn't see anything? And you go, well, no, I guess I cracked the door. I woke up. They're like, yeah, because there's no way you could have slept through that, Justin. You're right. You could have. You must have woken up. And then what? And cops often think they're, being helpful or whatever with that. They're actually pulling the story out of the kid.
They're
the kid's just sitting there going,
leading questions.
Oh God, I gotta think of something now because this happened. So I don't know. I didn't see the video, obviously, so I don't know.
I put him under highly questionable as a witness to this whole thing.
Oh yeah,
that's kind of the point that I want to get to.
So do I. Yeah, I definitely do.
I'm glad we're on the same page.
Oh yeah,
Cool.
definitely. As I mentioned, Tina was missing. Justin was actually the first person that I know of who pointed out that Tina was missing.
In my opinion, the only beneficial thing he did.
Yeah, I know. And funny thing too is he mentioned that the cops weren't really paying attention. Eventually, they concluded that Tina was indeed missing.
Well, as one of the parents got involved and listened to him and finally figured out, oh, yeah, there's a kid missing.
Yeah, it's funny. The cops, after questioning Justin, sent him home. He went home about 8:30 maybe that morning, down to cabin 26. And his mom said something to him like, how was it or how is it or how are they? And he said, they're all dead. And she's like, yeah, don't joke around like that. And he's going, no, Mom, they're all dead. The Sharps are all dead. And she finally figured out that,
he wasn't screwing around.
Yeah. And so maybe that's one reason he's a little messed up.
Well, I don't blame him for his shifting story. I blame the situation.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, it's a tough one.
So they started looking for Tina.
Yeah, a major girl hunt was undertaken for Tina Sharp, and she was not found. In April 1984, a guy named Ronald Pedrini was looking for antique bottles and such things in the woods around Camp 18, which is a place about 29 miles away from Ketty, and found part of a human skull. So he called the cops, and they took it into possession. And they did a search of the immediate area and found nothing.
Oh, that's not what I heard.
Yeah, well, no, that was in April. About 6 weeks later, they got an anonymous phone call. I think it was on May 30th. Somebody told them to look more around Camp 18, and they found more. They found bones. They found, most importantly, they found a lower jawbone.
Yeah, and quote other evidence pieces, right?
Other evidence pieces. Yeah, part of some blue jeans, and stuff. I'm not sure if they documented that stuff actually belonged to Tina or not.
Sure. I don't know if you could at that point.
Yeah, I know, but the lower jawbone was key because they could identify her through dental records. Yeah. So it's hard to say what happened to Tina. Obviously, they took her for a reason. I don't think they just killed her and hauled her body away. But we'll talk about that in a little bit.
Steve's making a
Do we have to?
Yeah.
2 weeks in a row. Really? Come on, you guys. You're killing me here.
Well, on a more cheerful note, you guys want to talk about autopsies?
Yeah. Yay!
Autopsy. Okay, Sue Sharp first. Her autopsy reported considerable dried and smeared blood on the soles of her feet, which is interesting, which indicates that she actually was on her feet, because she didn't have wounds on her feet, but she was on her feet apparently, walking through blood at some point. They found her on the couch, laying down on the couch with a blanket over her. Yeah. But at some point, she had walked through the blood. Nobody really knows why at this point. Her wrists and ankles were bound by white adhesive tape.
Did they find footprints in the blood? On the floor?
I have not found any mention of that. They probably were bloody footprints.
I didn't see anything about.
It would be hard because Sheila came home and likely checked the back. Right? She's the one who discovered this scene.
She didn't go in the house.
Oh, she didn't?
She opened the door and looked in and saw everything and screamed and ran.
Yeah.
Smart girl.
Yeah, that's what I'd do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Never mind.
But no, I've looked at those pretty extensively, unfortunately. I've looked at the crime scene photos.
So have I.
And there are blood smears all over the place.
As you would expect.
Yes, yeah.
But I didn't see footprints, so it's almost like there was blood and you were standing in the pool of it and then moved somewhere else, so you're not walking.
Yeah.
If you catch what I'm going for here, is you were standing in it and then you're not walking anymore.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I didn't see footprints anywhere.
No, I didn't see any either, and they're not mentioned anywhere in any of the police reports. Oh, anyway, back to her autopsy. So she had been, she was taken into the morgue, by the way, all still bound up and everything. So there's a pretty in-depth description in the autopsy report of the way she was her wounds and how she was bound up. They used electrical extension cords to tie her up, in addition to the tape. There was one around her wrist, and then the second one was heavier. It was tied to her wrist, and then it went down to her ankles and tied her ankles together. So she was
kind of hog-tied.
She was but not hog-tied with her hands behind her. Her hands were in front of her.
Oh, you're right. No, I'm sorry. Hog-tied's the wrong way, but it was ankles and
wrists.
Wrists connected.
Yeah, she was well immobilized.
Loosely, but connected.
Yeah, and of course we've already talked about the gag, which was, as quote, embedded deeply in the mouth, unquote, according to the autopsy. There was evidence around her head and face of a lot of blunt force trauma, which is, of course, the hammer. This was done with a hammer, which was found at the crime scene. There are lots of lacerations, also stab wounds in the chest and the abdomen and one in the neck. So the cause of death was listed for her blunt force trauma and stabbing. So in other words, it's not quite clear if she died of brain injuries first or being stabbed in the chest,
and bled out.
Yeah, so both. They just flipped a coin. Dana Wingate, on the other hand, he'd been beaten about the head, but he was not stabbed at all. He was strangled to death. His legs were also bound with his electrical cord, but his wrists were bound with tape only, which indicates that I guess they'd run out of extension cords.
I think so.
Yeah. Head and face showed blunt force trauma, but again, not stabbed, and it appears that he might have been killed by the blows to the head, but whoever it was, laid him on his back and strangled him for good measure.
So, before we get on to the next one, I know we've talked about it a couple of times now in this description, is the medical tape.
Uh-huh.
There was a lot of medical tape used to bind these people, enough that it was more than one roll, and they weren't the same kind.
Yeah, and they
were different widths.
They had a good supply of it.
Yeah, that's the weird thing is I can understand. I mean, we've all got medical tape in the medicine cabinet, the little silly spool that you get when you buy gauze or whatever. But this was a lot of medical tape when you think of company, and why there was so much medical tape.
That's something I haven't figured out either. Probably what they should have done was searched every house and gone through everybody's medical supplies, and whoever was missing all their tape, hey, you're the killer.
Joe always has a really simple explanation.
I know.
Well, all you have to do is do this, and then hey, they're the killer.
Yeah,
there we go.
Yeah, it appears that most, if not all, of the weapons and equipment were found on scene. Like, for example, the hammer, I believe, was found there, and the steak knife was easily found in the kitchen. Obviously, if you're going to tie people up and you're planning ahead and you're bringing your supplies, you're going to bring rope and not electrical cord. So that was...
Or medical tape.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The medical tape is something that the killer might have brought with.
Maybe
or
had
it might have been there.
I have a first aid kit in my car.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah.
But, and the thing about the medical tape is, we started to talk about this earlier, is that the medical tape, there was no blood underneath it, which means these people were all taped up.
And then killed.
Yeah. Same thing with it's harder to tell with electrical cord, but the tape made a very clear band when removed.
Yeah.
There was nothing under it. So they were taped up before they were killed.
In fairness, you would do that. You wouldn't. Why would you tape a dead body up?
To stage a scene.
Yeah, I guess.
People do that. People stage scenes, but I'm just saying it wasn't staged at all. It was, but it was weird that they taped and then tied the cords.
I don't know what that was about. If that was just for good measure or what. It may be if this person who did this, or persons. It may be that medical tape was just something to keep in good supply because you actually planned on doing something like this. So, so you're driving around in your car and you pick up a couple of hitchhikers. And you decide, you're going to commit a little multiple murder action tonight. And so you just reach under the seat where you've got your stash of this stuff they use for tying people up. Maybe that was it.
Well, go ahead.
Sorry, the extension cords, it seems like they were only used to do the what we're calling hog tying.
No, it's not hog tying, but it's...
Whatever, the tying from the arms to the legs to the wrist, right?
Yeah.
Well, that was on Sue only.
On Sue only.
Oh, John wasn't tied like that too?
No, the boys were tied together.
They were, yeah. They had tape around their wrists, and they had tape around their legs too, and then they had one long extension cord was tied around Dana's legs, and then it went over to the other half of it was used to tie John.
Okay, that's weird. I don't know why.
Well, yeah, no, and the thing about that is that when I kept reading the description, I thought that they were found feet to feet, but no, they were laying parallel to each other, which is a long enough extension.
Okay, that's weird to me. I was going to say it would make sense that you would have to improvise or use an extension cord if you were going to try and tie a length like that, because you couldn't use tape necessarily, but I don't know why.
I've never seen anything about this, but I also wonder if, again, somebody used what they found on site, electrical cords. Sue had 5 kids that lived in a rural area. Kids screw around and they get hurt, so I wonder if that was something she had in her medical kit, so to speak. And again, it was just something of convenience.
A couple rolls, maybe. You get one and you lose it, you misplace it, you got to go get another one.
And then you find the first one.
You find the first one. Yeah, that's true.
And also, there would be a plentiful supply of extension cords in this place, because it's an old cabin. There's probably no more than one electrical outlet per room, so there's going to be lots of extension cords.
Absolutely.
There was. One of the extension cords was from Sue and Tina's room. One was from the living room. So they pulled them from multiple rooms.
Yeah. Anyway, quickly about John Sharp. There's not much more to be said about him. His autopsy indicated again that he was killed by the severing of his carotid artery, but he again had a lot of blunt force trauma. A really vicious crime. I mean, bashing somebody in the head and the face with a hammer and then stabbing them with a knife. Yeah, pretty appalling crime. Okay, the wall. Oh yeah, one other thing. The walls had been apparently stabbed. Somebody had stabbed the walls.
Yeah, when you were a kid, did you ever try to throw a knife into a tree?
Oh yeah.
It seemed like that.
Yeah.
Like there was just gazillions of little stab marks in several walls, as if somebody was trying to throw a knife into a wall and get it to stick.
That.
Odd.
But that it does make you wonder if perhaps they were looking for something. Like they were looking for a false compartment behind the wall.
That's true.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, you're using it as kind of a sounding board.
Yeah. One theory that has been put forth. This is apparently what somebody somewhere in the town. So there's a lot of statements that are out there, and the record is being made by whom to whom. The record is not always clear.
It's a little town full of tons and tons of rumors.
Yeah, lots of them. One rumor was that it was a drug deal gone bad, and then a couple of people were just in the wrong place at the wrong time. Presumably that's John and Dana. And so...
And Tina.
And Tina. Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
I mean...
I don't agree with the drug deal gone bad, but is that in your... I'm assuming that's in the theory section, or should we talk about that now?
No, we can talk about it now. It's not really in the theory section, because the thing about it is there's no evidence. Like one of the suspects, there was some talk, some evidence that he actually sold hash and then supplemented his income selling hash, but there's no evidence of the kind of high-value drug smuggling presence in that town that would actually motivate you to murder somebody.
Well, coke moved through that town evidently at that time.
Yeah.
Cocaine was a trade.
But in quantity sufficient to cause somebody to get murdered?
Well, and the thing is, Sue was clean. There was no drugs in her system when they did the autopsy. She didn't drink. She didn't do drugs, as far as I could tell. I had a hard time tracking down her background. Maybe you found better information than I did, but from everything that I found, she was a straight arrow.
Yeah, I think so. I don't know why she would have been involved in anything like that.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense.
In fairness, though, straight arrows make the best dealers.
That's true.
Well, but she also, and maybe this is in your theory section, she had a couple of skeezy boyfriends.
Yeah, it's not the theory section either. But you're right. I mean, actually, a straight arrow would if nothing else, make for a good courier, or a good place to stash your stuff.
Yeah,
that's why I was so good in the drug trade. I mean, I would understand why that would work.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about the skull before we move on? The soft tissue bit?
Soft tissue bit? Yeah.
I feel like that's really interesting and compelling.
Yeah, well, we should talk about that. Yeah, back to Tina's skull. It was found almost 3 years to the day. It was like 3 years and 10 days, I think, or 3 years and 11 days afterwards. And It wasn't particularly weathered, which indicated it hadn't been in that spot probably for the whole 3 years, and it actually still had some soft tissue in it.
It did?
Yeah. Still has some brain matter in there and stuff, which would indicate, because if it had been there for 3 years, the bugs and everything would have cleaned that out. Mm-hmm. So
if it'd been outdoors even for 3 years, not just in that area.
Now that conflicts with the stuff that I've seen from the coroner who examined it, because he said it was clean.
Oh, really?
There was no organic material left on it. It was stained on one side from the dirt, but slightly bleached on the other, meaning it had sat in the same spot. That wasn't a sunny spot, but did get sun for at least a couple of years.
Okay.
So that's
I was then unfortunately I apologize to our listeners.
Well, no, I don't.
Misinformed. That was.
I mean, that's what he said, but I don't know if his recollection is right, because it was an interview done with him years later.
Yeah.
But this is the hard part, is that there's so many interpretations.
Yeah. It is easy to turn. Yeah, I'm not sure exactly when her body was put there. I don't think she was murdered immediately by,
I don't either.
Yeah, it's horrifying to think about, but I think she might have lived for quite a while after being kidnapped.
Oh, yeah, I don't agree with how... I think she lived a day or two, but
it might have just been a day or two. It could have been longer. I don't know. Well, we'll talk about that a little bit later, but...
Yeah.
I'll list a few suspects here. Martin Ray Smart, also known as Marty Smart. Marty Smart.
I'm sorry, I never really paid attention to the fact that it's Marty Smart.
Yeah, Marty. It makes you want to say Mighty Smart.
Well, it makes me think of that. What was that silly detective show in the '60s?
Yeah, Get Smart.
Yeah, Get Smart. That's
I was going to say it reminds me of Axeman.
Oh,
right. What is it, like Joard and Goard Snoward and Robert and Bobbert Smartest and no?
Like Axeman?
Yeah. We've watched it. It's fine.
Okay.
So Marty Smart.
Yeah, Marty Smart. Lived in cabin 26. He was not a model citizen. Supposedly, it's rumored that in the 70s he was living in Phoenix at that time and tried to murder his brother and expressed a desire to blow up his parents' house.
Cool.
Well, that's normal.
Yeah, apparently he went off to look for explosives but changed his mind, so good. That's lucky for the parents, huh? Marilyn said that at some point in 1980...
Sorry, who's Marilyn?
Oh, yeah. That was his wife, Marilyn.
Okay.
Sorry, I didn't mention that. Yeah, he married Marilyn, I think, in 79.
Marilyn being Justin's mom?
Justin's mom.
Got
So
married...
Was it Justin Smart? Was his name Smart at that time?
It was Justin Eason. I think he kept his dad's name. Yeah.
All right, so I just want, because that was one of my hard parts with this, is names flip all over the place.
They're not always consistent or correct in the websites, and like all these people in this town are named, and this person drove over to his place and saw him do that, and there's all these different names, and it's hard to keep track of the whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
I could make infographics about just about every one of these stories.
You could, yeah.
I'm not going to, though.
No, it's not worth the effort. But Marilyn said that he actually tried to run her and the kids over in 1980 with a car.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, apparently had a real anger problem.
Happy marriage.
Yeah, I know. He was Marty Smart. Was the guy that was selling hash. One person in town reportedly said he saw a brick of hash that looked like it weighed about a pound in Marty's house.
Oh no!
Yeah, I know.
So much.
And that's a lot of hash. That'll last me a week or two.
Make a good fire.
Yeah. In March 1981, he went to the Reno Veterans Administration Hospital to check into the psych ward, because he was apparently having some psych problems.
That evidently was at the request of his wife.
Yeah.
She coerced him or friends of his to talk him into going and getting checked in for help.
Because he had relationship issues.
Yeah.
Anger management. Yeah, that's one of the things he discussed with the therapist.
Yeah.
He's having marriage problems. She was threatening to divorce him. He had anger problems. Oh, yeah, another indication he had anger problems is that at one point he threatened to break Johnny Sharp's hands.
The 10-year-old Johnny Sharp?
The 15-year-old Johnny Sharp?
Yeah.
Right. He apparently...
Still, that's not that much better, really.
Yeah,
no.
Yeah, his wife Marilyn said that he didn't like teenagers, period. He thought they were all punks. He really didn't like women.
Well, they are.
Yeah.
Not all of them.
Yeah, and didn't like women particularly either. thought they were all sluts and whores. So yeah, the guy was
men like
he
that.
had serious issues.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. He later claimed to his therapist that he thought he had PTSD from his time in Vietnam. Although it turns out he had really soft duty in Vietnam.
He was a cook.
He was a cook, and he was far, far away from the war zone, and so he probably had, if you want to avoid getting shot, the best possible place to be in Vietnam if you were with the U.S. military. So his therapist really shot that down.
Yeah.
Yeah, was rightfully so.
Martin, depending on which thing you read. I've known a lot of guys like him.
Because you come from a small town.
Because I come from a small town where a bunch of guys went to Vietnam and they came back, and it's a rural community, and they didn't get the help they needed. And they have a lot of macho bravado about them because that's their defense mechanism. And and they'd say, "Listen, I'm going to beat the crap out of you, or I'm going to kill you." And some of it was just, a lot of it was talk from a lot of it. But there were some where you went, "Oh, wait, that guy's actually kind of serious and a little scary." And Martin Smart, he strikes me as a little leaning towards the serious, scary side than the full of hot air side.
Yeah, possibly. He did have a history of violence.
Well, the things that he said, they're very indicative of things that I've heard before, but the things that he's done, his actions, are why I'm like, yeah, part of that wasn't actually an act. He had a few screws loose.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, it sounds like. But yeah, the thing about small towns is that the nutcases and psychos, you really can't avoid running into them. If you live in a big city, they're kind of self-segregating. They're living off in the poor part of town, and you hopefully are not. And then,
well, it's also terrible because the cycle for them is so much smaller and tighter. Think about it. You live in a metro area, and you've got some issues, and you run into somebody, and they anger you, and you think about it, but you don't see that person for 6 months, so by the time you see them, all that pent-up whatever has just kind of dissipated. Whereas if you run into somebody and you live in a small town and they've done something to anger you, and it's starting to cycle up, and then you see them 3 days later, it cycles up more. 4 days later, 2 days later, it just these situations are pressure cookers for a personality like that.
Yeah, small towns aren't all just not all milk and honey.
No, not rainbows.
And small towns, interestingly enough, they vary in their culture. Like I spent most of my younger years in a small town, and I think it's fair to say there was another town about 7 miles away that culturally was significantly different from ours. And it really is true. It's not all Mayberry or anything like that.
No.
Some of them are. Some of them are really nice places, full of nice people, and some of them are full of jerks. Yeah.
People with problems.
Yeah.
Can we start talking about the...
You want to get back to the mystery?
Sorry.
Yeah, no, I'm totally off here.
Yeah, we really kind of delve into that a little bit too much.
I can't commiserate, so...
Yeah, that's true. Okay, so back to the veteran. So he's in the psych ward. His claim for PTSD has been kind of rebuffed. Yeah, and eventually he checked out and went back to Ketty, and he brought a friend that he'd met in the VA hospital. Another guy with mental issues.
Good idea.
Yeah, I'll talk about this guy a little bit later. Marty, we're still talking about Marty being a suspect. Apparently, somebody recalled him saying on April 4th or the 11th, somebody knew it was a Saturday, but couldn't remember specifically what date it was. Marty had told him that if Marty didn't get things straightened out, he might kill somebody. And
was that, I could never clue in, was that straightened out with his wife or just straightened out in general, or do you know?
It's very vague. It's very vague, yeah. Marty, of course, was a suspect. I think one of the things that sort of got the police interested in him is that his wife, the day of April 12th, when the bodies were discovered, his wife moved out.
Well, and her son was one of the surviving boys as well.
Mm-hmm. And it would explain why his story changed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like if you opened the door and saw his stepdad, killing a bunch of people.
Yeah.
You might say, yeah, I saw something, and they'd say,